He was with his girlfriend for 6 hours before she unexpectedly passed away, leaving everyone shocked. He had been with his girlfriend for 6 hours when, to everyone's shock, she suddenly passed away. Come when you're killed. This ironic phrase, often humorously attributed to law enforcement in dealings with citizens, tragically mirrors the reality many face in Russia today. It starkly illustrates the government's dismissive stance towards citizens' rights to defend themselves and their loved ones against criminal acts. The harrowing tale of Vera Pekteleva from Kemerovo, a northern Russian city, epitomizes this grim reality. Her desperate pleas for help went unanswered for hours, turning a common saying into a grim prophecy. Yet, let's not jump ahead. Let's start at the beginning to perhaps understand why, in our contemporary society, indifference is deemed the gravest sin. Vera Pekteleva was born on September 24, 1997, in Kiselevsk, within the Kemerovo region. She attended a local lyceum, actively participating in regional and city events, and even clinched first place at the Rainbow Festival. Known for her artistic flair, Vera loved dancing and performed with the vocal ensemble Kai Oski. Her parents cherished her deeply, celebrating each milestone in her budding musical career. After graduating from school, it seemed natural for Vera to pursue further studies at the University of Culture, given her artistic talents and potential for a successful career in the arts. However, in a surprising twist, Vera opted instead to enroll at the Kuzbas State Technical University in Kemerovo, choosing to study in the Faculty of Economic Security. Excelling academically, Vera harbored aspirations of working in the department tasked with tackling economic crimes. Despite her parents' divorce during her early years, Vera maintained a warm relationship with her father, Eugene. She frequently visited and vacationed with his new family, where she was warmly embraced. This connection offered her perspectives from both her original and new family environments, enriching her life experiences and shaping her future aspirations. In this tight-knit community, where respect among relatives was paramount, Vera encountered Vlad Kanyus. To her, Vlad was strikingly handsome, always cheerful, and exceedingly polite. Their acquaintance deepened into a relationship beginning in 2017. Both their families resided in the same building in Kiselevsk, Kemerovo, and had been acquainted for years. Vera's parents, along with many locals, were aware of Vladislav's tumultuous past. His mother had left early on for a new life with another man, entrusting young Vlad to his father's care. Tragically, his father later committed a crime and, after a court trial, ended his life with a shotgun, an act witnessed by Vlad. This horrific event indelibly scarred Vlad, leaving a permanent mark on his psyche. Despite his challenging life and the sympathy it evoked from the community, Vera's parents harbored reservations. They envisioned a different life for their daughter, away from someone they perceived as having a complicated personality and lacking lofty ambitions, traits they found disheartening given Vera's success. However, love blinded Vera to any potential misgivings about Vlad. She continued her relationship discreetly. Their romance was hardly public knowledge. On her Instagram, Vera never posted photos with Vlad, and even many of her close friends remained unaware of this aspect of her life. The couple enjoyed their time together at house parties, hookah bars, and various entertainment spots, while Vlad shared their moments together on his social media. Kira Igorova, a close friend of Vera's, noted that although the couple often quarreled, they always managed to reconcile as if nothing had occurred. Vera's parents hoped the relationship would fizzle out, but instead, Vera became more secretive, ceasing to discuss her personal life with them. Over time, Vlad's presence at family gatherings dwindled, as did their shared photographs, signaling a shift in how Vera managed her relationship within her family's view. Vera, in an attempt to shield her parents from worry and avoid their lengthy lectures about Vlad's unsuitability, began to conceal the relationship. Her parents, however, remained firm in their belief that Vlad did not truly love Vera, but was merely using her to better his own life, given her promising future prospects. They had plans to assist their only daughter with securing an apartment and future employment. Vera's life was on an upward trajectory, which starkly contrasted with Vlad's, who had dropped out of school after the 9th grade and showed little interest in furthering his education or securing stable employment. He relied on intermittent earnings from acquaintances and even let Vera pay for their shared room in the dormitory where they lived for about a year. In a candid conversation with her mother, Vera inadvertently revealed her realization that Vlad was dependent on her, exploiting her emotionally and financially. Gradually, Vlad's behavior took a darker turn as he became increasingly possessive, forbidding Vera from going out alone and obsessively tracking her movements outside the home. Despite Vera's attempts to foster trust and understanding to avoid conflicts, their discussions bore no fruit. By November 2019, the relationship reached its breaking point. Vera finally told her mother over the phone that she and Vlad were parting ways. Her mother, relieved, felt that Vera had at last removed the rose-colored glasses through which she had viewed Vlad. After more than 3 years together, Vera moved to a different dormitory. According to Marina Tokariva, a close friend of Vera, she rarely complained about Vlad, but recently confessed that their arguments had become more frequent and intense, occasionally escalating to physical altercations. In a heartfelt discussion with her mother, Vera detailed the manipulative dynamics of their relationship. Deciding to end things once and for all, on January 13, 2020, the 23-year-old Vera Pektilova went to Vladislav Kanius's apartment at 28 Leningradsky Prospect around 6 p.m. to gather her belongings and definitively end their relationship. Vera had intended merely to retrieve her belongings, but Vlad had other plans. He orchestrated a romantic dinner, setting the table elegantly to rekindle their relationship. Initially, they engaged in light conversation over drinks. Vera sipped sparingly, while Vlad consumed one shot after another, escalating the situation into a rowdy ordeal. Sensing the shift, Vera decided it was time to leave. However, Vlad's demeanor quickly changed. He raised his voice, sometimes yelling, accusing Vera of infidelity. He hurled insults at her, adamantly claiming she had another boyfriend. Throughout the evening, Vera stayed connected with a friend via voice messages, keeping her updated on the unfolding situation. Unbeknownst to Vera, Vlad also sent messages from her phone, dissuading her friend from intervening, insisting he wanted to resolve the issues alone. When Vera's messages ceased, her friend, accustomed to their frequent reconciliations, suspected nothing unusual. According to an interview with Vladislav Kanius, the evening took a volatile turn. When I suggested we reconcile and accused her of seeing someone else, she became infuriated. She resorted to foul language and became physically aggressive. She struck me multiple times, 5 kicks to the groin and 8 slaps across the face. While the slaps didn't hurt, the kicks did cause me physical pain, Vlad claimed, stating that Vera initiated the violence, which infuriated him further, especially her denial of the alleged affair. The situation spiraled out of control into the early hours of January 14, 2020. Disturbing screams emanated from an apartment on the 7th floor of Building 28, prompting concerned neighbors of Vladislav Kanius to alert others as the distressing sounds pierced the quiet night. The building echoed with Vera's desperate cries for help, prompting concerned residents to urgently call the police. However, law enforcement agencies informed them that no teams were immediately available. Over the course of an hour, emergency calls were placed, with dispatchers hearing the victim's frantic screams in the background, yet help was not dispatched promptly. As time dragged on, the screams persisted, and residents from other floors joined in the effort, pleading with emergency services to dispatch officers as soon as possible. A woman dispatcher confirmed she had relayed the information to the Lenin Department of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and reassured callers that police were en route. Yet, no police presence materialized. Eventually, the screams ceased. Outside the door, a loud male voice, Vlad's, could be heard apologizing to Vera, professing his love. By the time the neighbors decided to intervene and forcibly entered the apartment, it was tragically too late. They discovered Vera lifeless in a pool of blood, beyond help. The question lingered. What exactly transpired that night at 28 Leningradsky Prospect, and where were the police who might have saved Vera Pektilova? Before Vera's arrival, Vladislav Kanius had chillingly informed his brother over the phone of his intent to kill her. His brother rushed to the scene but was too late to avert the tragedy. The door was locked, and the apartment was already filled with Vera's screams. When the neighbors finally broke down the door, Vladislav's brother was the first to step into the blood-soaked apartment. The scene was chaotic, with items strewn about, and Vera was found on the floor, her face a ghastly shade of orange-red with blood around her mouth. Vladislav was found in the bathroom, knife in hand, muttering to himself. The neighbors urgently called the police again to report a murder. Only then did an investigative and operational team arrive at the scene, raising critical questions about the response time and the effectiveness of the emergency services that night. I wanted the silence to come. I wasn't thinking about her suffering. She screamed, insulted me during our conflict. Striking her didn't bring me any pleasure. I just wanted her to stop yelling. The killer repeated while waiting for the task force. After committing the act, he made no attempt to flee and surrendered to the operatives without resistance. The girl is dead, the criminal apprehended, and all that remains is the anticipation of punishment and retribution. Yet the burning question lingers. Why were Vera's neighbors, rather than the duty-bound officers, the ones desperately trying to save her? Let's revisit that horrific time when her former boyfriend methodically ended her life while the police displayed complete indifference and negligence. At 4:52 a.m., the first call from residents of the hostel at Leningradsky Prospect 28 came in, reporting a fight. A man detailed a woman's screams from apartment number 738, desperately calling for help. By this time, at least 15 people had already gathered on the scene. 3 minutes later, at 4:55 a.m., Major Mikhail Balashov and Captain Dmitry Teretsyn at the police department were alerted about the disturbance. However, no teams were ready for dispatch. It was revealed that a week-long training exercise was underway, severely depleting available resources, a situation all too common as dispatchers noted over the phone. By 4:58 a.m., Major Balashov, the shift supervisor, expressed his frustration to a colleague, lamenting the lack of available personnel to respond to the call. All squads were reportedly occupied. 10 minutes later, he dialed another number, seeking reinforcements, but was turned down across the board. Meanwhile, neighbors frantically continued to flood emergency lines, with everyone's nerves frayed. Concurrently, the district's dispatcher's office was scrambling to address the situation. Further complicating matters, traffic police refused involvement, citing the apartment disturbance as outside their jurisdiction. Some cited a lack of fuel, others mentioned a flat tire, and so an hour and a half slipped by without any police intervention. Major Balashov ultimately failed to dispatch any officers to Leningradsky Prospect, unable to muster any personnel for the task. At 5:10 a.m., in a bewildering prioritization of tasks, Major Mikhail Balashov dispatched a team not to address the ongoing crisis at Leningradsky Prospect, but to investigate the reported death of an elderly man elsewhere. Meanwhile, Vera continued to scream for help. By 5:21 a.m., weary from the night's lack of action, Major Balashov opted to rest, handing over duties to Captain Dmitry Teretsyn, who, upon receiving reports of the violent scene, similarly failed to act. At 5:28 a.m., Officer Maria Duneva was caught making light of the situation over the phone, remarking that there was no one available to respond and joking about the residents' futile attempts to break into the apartment. Despite hearing Vera's ongoing screams, she dismissively ended the call with a nonchalant, "All right, everything's fine. It's okay." The critical moment slipped by, and the assailant, unhurried by any potential intervention, continued his brutality. By 6:35 a.m., with still no response from the police, the desperate neighbors managed to procure a metal crowbar and began forcibly entering the apartment. They were met with a horrifying scene: Vera's lifeless body amidst a bloody backdrop. Despite their immediate call for help upon discovering the body, it took an additional hour and a half before emergency services finally arrived, too late to save Vera or arrest her assailant on the spot. Frustrated and distraught, the neighbors wondered aloud about their next steps, having been forced to take matters into their own hands. Remarkably, once the emergency services were alerted to Vera's death, a squad arrived within 15 minutes. Vladislav Kanyus, then 23, was charged with murder committed with particular cruelty. The trial for the murder of Vera Pekteleva began in February 2021. In court, Vlad offered a chilling confession. He had struck Vera 4 times and then strangled her with an iron wire, claiming he had only intended to frighten her and make her sleep, not to kill her. When Vladislav Kanyus realized the gravity of his actions, it was already far too late. This realization starkly contrasted with the enduring screams heard by neighbors, which lasted for 3.5 hours. Only after the case gained public attention were the parents able to push for a reclassification of the crime to murder with particular cruelty under Part 2 of Article 105 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. The repercussions extended beyond Vladislav to the police involved. Initially, 2 officers faced prosecution, but the scrutiny intensified, leading to charges against 3 additional policewomen who had disregarded the desperate screams heard over their calls. Forensic evidence presented by the family's lawyer indicated that Vera Pektileva had endured prolonged suffering. Her injuries were extensive and inflicted over a significant period. Forensic experts compiled a damning report showing that there was virtually no part of Vera's body left unmarred by violence. The autopsy revealed a horrific array of bruises, abrasions, cuts, and lacerations, with nearly half of the injuries concentrated on her face. The attacker had not limited himself to using his limbs. Heavy objects and eventually knives were employed to maximize pain. The evidence showed that Kanyus switched knives partway through the attack, opting for a sharper blade to inflict additional wounds, indicating a deliberate, sadistic prolongation of Vera's agony. The severity of the abuse required extensive cosmetic efforts to prepare Vera for her funeral. She was dressed in a high-collared outfit to try to conceal the brutal marks of violence, but not all injuries could be hidden. In response to the outrage and the evidence, a month after the incident, the investigative committee initiated another criminal case against Mikhail Balashov, the head of the duty shift, and Dmitry Taratsin, the senior operational duty officer at the Leninsky Police Department. Charged under Article 293 of the Criminal Code, they were accused of neglecting to dispatch assistance despite receiving reports of a woman screaming for help in an apartment on Leningradskaya Street. Both Balashov and Taratsin refrained from cooperating with the investigation and maintained their innocence, further complicating the proceedings. According to their defense, when the distress call was received from Leningradskaya, the department's investigative team was preoccupied at a different location where they had discovered a deceased man earlier. Additionally, logistical issues were highlighted as complicating factors. Notably, one of the immediate response vehicles had run out of gasoline at 3 a.m., which was before the series of distress calls began after 4 a.m. The accountability of the police officers who failed to respond to the urgent calls was in doubt for an extended period. By early March 2021, these officers had not been suspended and were still active within the law enforcement community. They consistently denied any wrongdoing and resisted cooperating with the ongoing investigation. The public and human rights advocates vociferously demanded justice, insisting on appropriate penalties for those responsible. In a significant development in July 2022, the Kemerovo court handed down a 17-year prison sentence to Vladislav Kanyus, although the prosecution had sought 23 years in a strict regime colony. Furthermore, the court ordered Vladislav to pay compensation of 1.5 million rubles to Vera's grieving parents. They had been under the impression that the case was being prosecuted under the charge of murder committed with particular cruelty. However, they were shocked to discover at trial that the charges had been downgraded to a less severe category, with no official explanation provided. An unofficial comment from someone within the prosecutor's office suggested that the original charge required evidence of at least 100 stab wounds, a criterion not met in this case. In his final statement, Vlad maintained that Vera had provoked the altercation and that he had not intended for it to end tragically. Dissatisfied with the outcome, Vera's father believed that the leniency of Vladislav's sentence was influenced by the ongoing investigation into the police's conduct. The family was considering pursuing further legal action, aiming to appeal for a harsher sentence, potentially life imprisonment, for Vladislav Kanyus. In the summer of 2023, the court handed down sentences to 5 police officers involved in the negligence surrounding Vera Pektileva's case. 3 officers, Major Mikhail Balashov, Captain Dmitry Taratsin, and dispatcher Maria Ponomareva, received 2-year suspended sentences. Dispatchers Maria Duneva and Kristina Yudinseva were sentenced to 1.5 years each. The sentences brought significant public attention, highlighting the inadequate response of the law enforcement agencies involved. However, the case took an unexpected turn when rumors surfaced that Vladislav Kanyus, who had been sentenced for the brutal murder of Vera, might be pardoned. In 2023, images surfaced online showing Kanyus in military uniform, suggesting his involvement in military activities in Ukraine. Upon inquiry, Vera's mother was informed by the Federal Penitentiary Service, FSEN, that in April, Kanyus had been transferred to the Gufsin in the Rostov region, raising suspicions that he might have been allowed to sign a military service contract as a pathway to freedom. In the fall of that year, it was confirmed that Kanyus had indeed been pardoned by the president, resulting in his release and the expungement of his criminal record. Additionally, it was initially believed that he was relieved from the obligation to pay compensation to Vera's family. However, this was later clarified by bailiffs who explained that the compensation payments were only suspended during his participation in military activities. By May 2024, the victims of the police negligence, which contributed to the tragedy, were awarded 700,000 rubles in compensation, far less than the tenfold higher amount originally claimed in the criminal case. This sequence of events raises profound questions about the responsiveness and accountability of modern justice systems. The hesitation to intervene in potentially violent situations, whether due to fear of becoming involved in personal disputes or being an unwanted witness to a family drama, underscores a broader societal reluctance that can sometimes hinder justice and aid in the perpetuation of violence. In the summer of 2023, the court handed down sentences to 5 police officers involved in the negligence surrounding Vera Pekteleva's case. 3 officers, Major Mikhail Balashov, Captain Dmitry Teretsin, and dispatcher Maria Ponomareva, received 2-year suspended sentences. Dispatchers Maria Duneva and Kristina Yudinseva were sentenced to 1.5 years each. The sentences brought significant public attention, highlighting the inadequate response of the law enforcement agencies involved. However, the case took an unexpected turn when rumors surfaced that Vladislav Kanyus, who had been sentenced for the brutal murder of Vera, might be pardoned. In 2023, images surfaced online showing Kanyus in military uniform, suggesting his involvement in military activities in Ukraine. Upon inquiry, Vera's mother was informed by the Federal Penitentiary Service, FSIN, that in April, Kanyus had been transferred to the Gufsin in the Rostov region, raising suspicions that he might have been allowed to sign a military service contract as a pathway to freedom. In the fall of that year, it was confirmed that Kanyus had indeed been pardoned by the president, resulting in his release and the expungement of his criminal record. Additionally, it was initially believed that he was relieved from the obligation to pay compensation to Vera's family. However, this was later clarified by bailiffs, who explained that the compensation payments were only suspended during his participation in military activities. By May 2024, the victims of the police negligence, which contributed to the tragedy, were awarded 700,000 rubles in compensation, far less than the tenfold higher amount originally claimed in the criminal case. This sequence of events raises profound questions about the responsiveness and accountability of modern justice systems. The hesitation to intervene in potentially violent situations, whether due to fear of becoming involved in personal disputes or being an unwanted witness to a family drama, underscores a broader societal reluctance that can sometimes hinder justice and aid in the perpetuation of violence.